Okay, so I will start with giving the opportunity to introduce your organization and also maybe just also tell you what has been done for the last year as well. So just as an introduction. So Dima, we start with you. Please
Yeah,
introduce yourself.
I'm representing Horizon Capital. We are the largest private equity fund operating in Ukraine. We have over $1.4 billion in assets under management. We've been doing business in Ukraine for about 30 years, and we have raised 6 funds. Actually, we have 4 flagship funds, but in total we manage 6 funds. Perhaps the most relevant for today's discussion is that just 2 weeks ago, we had a signing ceremony in Kiev with the President Zelensky and our LPs, which represented more than $500 billion in assets under management. And that signing ceremony was for the interim closing of our latest fund, $250 million Horizon Capital Growth Fund 4. It is the largest fund raised since the start of the war in Ukraine, and the sole purpose of this fund is to provide growth capital for Ukrainian entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurs, leveraging Ukraine's talent and cost advantage.
That was short. Thank you. Roman?
So hi everyone, my name is Roman Nikitov. I represent ICU Ventures, and ICU Ventures is actually part of a bigger ICU group, which initially stood for Investment Capital Ukraine, the topic of the panel. Overall, a multi-strategy firm, pre-war numbers would be close to $1 billion under management in different strategies. The venture strategy that I had is split into 2. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. We invest in Ukrainian companies, early stage companies, and we also invest elsewhere in the fintech world. We have a couple of private equity investments also in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine. Yeah, we're here looking forward to fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much, Andrei, for invitation. Last minute. I'm actually the last 23 years involved in project finance, structured finance on behalf of investment boutique family owned by my family in various countries. We invested in more than 60 projects. About 2 billion euro, and it's absolutely out of the market, regulated. It's case by case. Pre-selection is done by me, to be short. And then, of course, there's investment committee, blah, blah, blah. And we used to work with big corporations, and we survived 3 big crises because simply my company was established as a joint stock company in 2000. So it's exactly the age of my son, who is taking care more and more about this investment boutique. We initiated establishing investment fund, international investment fund, quite recently, and it's going to be hopefully the 18th fund, very large, and it's still not enough. So don't worry about competition. We manage because, as we know, according to World Bank, the probably needs of investments in Ukraine, it's more than $400 billion. And more come because of you don't need to invest only in rebuilding of what was before. You just need to invest a lot more. I was in Ukraine more than 20 times. Yes, I fully agree with you. Very important point. Not politicians, not international organizations gonna make the real dirty work, dirty in brackets. The real work gonna be made by entrepreneurs. And as you know from my introduction on LinkedIn, I used to work in 6 Polish governments in a very difficult time, beginning of 90s, and our prime goal was to establish free market economy based on decentralization of the power and supporting small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. So today in Poland we have about 3 million companies registered, active. So that's and 70%, more than 70% of employment is coming from these companies, not big, unfortunately, mostly state-controlled companies or big international companies. So that's short introduction from my part.
Thank you, that's impressive. And I'll do short for myself because I was introduced as the chairman of the UVCA, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm also a VC investor from 2001, 26 investments, 14 exits on my side, and we are continuing to do so. In terms of the first question and we start kind of like we started, what is your reflection for the last year investment market in Ukraine? I highlighted some numbers, but did you expect it's going to be worse or it's going to be better? What is your reflection in terms of how our market investment market is continuing to operate under the full-scale war?
Look, we're not surprised because we're on the ground and we've been fundraising, so we actually have seen in practice and a lot of participated in many of the deals which were mentioned there. But I do think it comes as a surprise to many of the international investors to whom we have spoken over the last 12 months. But the data shows basically the story of resilience of Ukraine's economy and Ukraine's ecosystem. Look, the things on the ground are happening, the deals are happening. The companies continue operating to the surprise, exceeding expectations, sometimes doing the impossible, because not only the businesses are thriving, they had to face some of the challenges to which they have, never been prepared to face. And they managed to do both, do great for the companies, ensure the safety of their employees, at the same time continue running the businesses to the very, very high standards. I keep on repeating the stories that, back in March and April, we really have seen, amazed messages from our international, partners and clients of our portfolio companies, which said, look, it's been a shock for us here, and you continue on delivering on the commitments, on the work which you have been doing while managing this very, very difficult and challenging situation on the ground. So I think what, Andrei, you have presented is basically, it's the testament and it's the result of the resilience of the Ukrainian entrepreneurial ecosystem, which we see.
Yeah, thank you for this.
Yeah, actually, the numbers that we've seen for 2022 overall for IT sector, if we talk about IT sector, which was actually growth, something like 24%, and I'm quoting the deputy minister here, so I'm safe. And the fact that in 2022, the IT sector paid more taxes in Ukrainian budget than a year before, the peaceful year. Those numbers are surprising. The resilience has not been surprising, and the preparation of Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian businessmen were not surprising. And the fact is that many companies had before 24th of February kind of contingency plans because the war in Ukraine started back in 2014 for us. So everybody was preparing back then. We didn't know what to expect. So when things actually happened, people just pulled the plug and used the contingency plans. Obviously, the heavy asset type of businesses, especially those that were hurt, it's difficult to say that they have been not struggling. I mean, some of them, don't exist anymore. But those that have survived on the ground, obviously, have found ways to reconnect the dots, to rebuild the logistics, everything very quickly. And IT sector is actually blessed with two things. First, and the reason probably behind these surprising numbers, first thing is obviously that IT sector is asset light model, so they could operate in a cloud from any environment. And second is that 65% of IT sector in Ukraine is actually export oriented. So that the resilience and the sustainability is something that actually helped them to survive, because most of the clients would be outside of the war zone and with their own timelines and commitments. So the overall the overall thesis, prevailing thesis for Ukrainian IT sector was to basically make sure that we deliver whatever happens, and that's how all these stories from coding in a bunker or somewhere are coming from.
Yeah, true stories. Andrzej, what is your impression about how's our market doing?
Your market, it's about people and entrepreneurs. Obviously, the political statements are very encouraging, but nothing replaces the real changes which are simply related to the predictable legal framework. I know it's very difficult. This war started not by Ukraine, but Putin. And we simply, as a private fund, we started cooperation with agriculture, let's say food security sector. And we already are after the first round of capital raising for very, very big project, which always starts with a small pilot factory, which is related to organic fertilizers production. Ukraine is very powerful in terms of knowledge. Your universities and people are very powerful in this area. So we are, after the first round, successful round. Okay, and I just came back, I didn't know you've been there, from Abu Dhabi AIM, and we're going to invest jointly with Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Estonian, and the German and UK group of scientists and private investors to Middle East, because your country is destroyed in terms of the soils. Demining is going to be very costly, and the millions of hectares need to be restored, and you need to have also special minerals, and you have it in your laboratories, and you are one of the biggest. Ukraine is one of the biggest exporter of food, and that's number one. Second, the so-called body leasing is not only that's what is related to IT sector and Ukraine anymore. And the good thing is that in Poland we have many IT companies and tremendous shortage of IT experts. So thanks to Ukrainian experts, many companies in Poland are still competitive and developing and expanding. So having tens of thousands students from Ukraine on the Polish technical universities, you can continue education, you can continue growing up by startups, also in this European Union environment, which is Poland, and expand to Ukraine, yeah, to different countries. So later on, so these are two areas which are very picky, and I would strongly recommend to focus on these two areas, because this is the strength of Ukraine, from my perspective.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would say probably all the Ukrainian IT outsourcing companies, they open up offices in Poland and also all over Europe, and not only in Europe, also in Latin America and so on. So they're also expanding because they're also following the talent and they follow the new markets. In terms of the resilience of Ukrainian market, for us in 2014, when we established the association, we've been promoting Ukrainian market and benchmarking Ukraine with Israel. Okay, so basically it's the same risk profile, because obviously Ukraine was not, let's say, bankable because we were legally in the war, but we've been showcasing the Israel case that been in the war for decades, but been able to attract investments. And the other secret sauce for our continuous investments is that I mentioned that $3 billion been invested in almost in the 1,500 Ukrainian companies since 2014. But guess who is invested? It's more than 300 international funds that been invested and continue to invest in Ukrainian ecosystem from 2014. Of course, majority of them American funds, and the majority of those are being invested in Israel. So for them, in terms of risk profile, they're okay to do this and will continue to do so. So the resilience from our entrepreneurs and the available capital, which was deployed before, and the developed ecosystem of co-investments, because you need to understand, Ukrainian ecosystem been built by co-investments, let's say, platforms. So basically, Ukrainian funds on early stage been investing first. Some of the local funds been investing around A and B, like Horizon Capital, but the majority of our ecosystem been actually facing the US market. In terms of the fundraising, because I mentioned that you cannot rebuild Ukraine if you will not get the capital. How you get the capital? Only through the funds that have been raising, because they're professional fund managers, they've been done before. And I also mentioned that Horizon Capital and Mitro also mentioned have closed the fund, because for us it's very important, and because now we can showcase that everything is possible. And probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that in terms of full-scale war in the history, it probably was first example, right? That you're able to close the fund, especially from institutional investors. But can you share with us how is it possible? Because basically this is case motivate not only current funds that 17 they've been raising, but also some of our members that say, hey, if Horizon Capital been able to raise, why not us? Why not now in terms of to do this? Can you share with us how it's been journey, how it become possible?
Look, it became possible because of the investment companies, which portfolio companies in which we invested, and the track record we have. So, we are the managers of the capital. It's our, of course, fiduciary duty to manage this capital. But if not for the portfolio companies, if not for the available opportunities at the market, it would have been impossible to convince LPs to provide capital for us. And, to your point, we really hope that with this fundraising, the first successful fundraising for an institutional fund manager, it will open up new doors, and it will open up new opportunities, and it will actually show that Ukraine is open for doing business and it's open for investment. In terms of some of the kind of practical things which really helped us, I think what resonated really well with our LPs, and it was, in terms of our fundraising, it was a combination of existing LPs which have backed previous 3 funds, but also new LPs which came in. I think the biggest factor, which was the wow moment for them, is that 3 or 4 months into the war, our LPs saw the performance of our portfolio companies. And what they have realized is that many of the portfolio companies, if not most of the portfolio companies for Horizon Capital, for our latest fund, were outperforming their peers in Western Europe and in the US. So there's just kind of one data point which I can share. The median revenue growth in dollar terms for our latest fund, portfolio company, our latest fund, is 30%. That's despite the war in Ukraine, that's despite the economic slowdown, that's despite the tech meltdown, hoping. And it's only about the fundamentals. If you can compound at 30% annually in these circumstances, of course it's very, very attractive for investors. And what we have seen is that the current environment offers multiple opportunities, multiple portfolio investment opportunities which can show the same performance. So I think it's very rational. It's very rational to deploy capital at this time when capital is scarce into a land or an area where offers plenty of fundamentally attractive opportunities.
So basically, they done it because of the pure performance, and they saw the opportunity, and they just took the risk. Yeah, okay. Roman, I know that you've been planning for raising the new fund. Tell me, what is your feedback you're getting from the investors? Of course, now you will be able to use the Horizon Capital success story in terms of your fundraising like anybody else, but tell me how it's been on the road. I know you just started, but still, what is your impression? What kind of feedback you're getting from the many possible investors in this room?
Right, so maybe a few words about what is our strategy to start with. strategy related to venture capital part of the business. So we have two strategies in which we have already employed close to $50 million. One strategy is directly connected to Ukraine. This would be what we call a Ukraine Global SaaS strategy, where the R&D or entrepreneurs would be from Ukraine or Eastern Europe generally, developing global SaaS businesses with a focus on deep tech, because we just think that deep tech angle actually is a competitive edge advantage for Eastern European and Ukrainian engineers. And we have about 20 companies in our portfolio with that strategy. Another 10 companies, so overall we have 32 companies in the portfolio at the moment. 10 companies in our portfolio is another angle of emerging markets, which is basically the reverse strategy from kind of going from local to global companies, where we take global fintech stories and see how they're applied in big, unloved, populous markets. We started with Asia and then extended into Latin America. So we'll be investing in fintech stories, local stories in populous markets like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, Brazil, and Argentina. So we're raising in both strategies. At the moment, we're raising a follow-up fund. So we're taking the best performing top companies and contributing into the new fund. And we're raising, after the first 50 million fund, we're targeting 100 million. The discussions with investors are not easy, obviously. There is no doubt. Many people are really scared, is the best word, to actually employ money or deploy money to people that are exposed to Ukraine physically, and they're trying to understand how to estimate that risk. Whether the bomb can shoot the money manager, physically. So what happens then? So we're talking through these risks and estimating. And the investors, there is a momentum that I see that Ukraine has never had. On the other hand, the momentum is that Ukraine has become really a differentiation point. I mean, it stands out as something different because we all know we've been raising for Ukraine or with Ukrainian-related stories, where most investors would actually confuse Ukraine with Russia, Poland, or whatever in the world. Now Ukraine does have a brand for whatever it's worth, for whatever it's through whatever it was gained, and this is a good thing. This makes it easier to differentiate. Obviously, the old pre-war questions and concerns are there. The rule of law, the questions related to IP right protection, how exactly is possible, the legal framework, meaning that most investors are like, okay, this is beyond EU, then we don't understand it. And now it helps that Ukraine is on track to EU and candidacy. Ukraine is official candidate to European Union. That helps. It's built. But the trust is built very slow, and we're working and are very patient to basically build that trust and demonstrate and continue demonstrating and updating our investors with our company's performance. Just like Dima mentioned, I mean, we were surprised that none of the Ukrainian companies failed. Not surprised, obviously, we all knew, right, that everybody will withstand the war. But it was a good surprise that everybody withstood, and probably half of our portfolio, in fairness, have been growing 20-25%.
Wow. You touched the point about the European investors or European LP, and basically this is a bit what changed, not just because of the millions of Ukrainians are in Europe, but also the entrepreneurs. But from this perspective, because I know you have experience by raising from the European Union investors, European LPs, what do you think would be the, let's say, selling point to motivate them to back up the Ukrainian funds now, not the post-war? I know it's a very difficult question I've been asking, but maybe you have some feedback or from experience. How would you do this?
The answer is very simple. It's all about people, and each war starts and ends. Okay, so entrepreneurs know that if the war started, one day it will be finished. So some investors sit and wait in beautiful villas in Dubai or in Switzerland. Some go here and talk and create new funds. So it's about approaching people who are more brave, open-minded, to let's say, challenging environment. And I understand we are in this kind of environment. One point, do you know that private equity funds in Europe are mostly established? It's about 85% of funds from European Investment Bank.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so this is big news. And you need to bring your very wealthy Ukrainian investors, very experienced fund managers, to bring your equity, and that was part of my several visits between 2014 and 2016, and meeting the Mr. President Poroshenko top financial advisors, to invite the wealthiest people to participate in transformation of Ukraine. Bring 10%, we will finance 90% of the private equity funds, mostly, and the venture capital. And I'm telling you very open, there was no interest, even in this structure. We need to talk about this kind of things openly, in order to be open for the future. And today, we are, and I am involved still in EIC Accelerator Fund, which is open fund for Ukrainian companies. Just apply, prepare professional bids. Still to be invested is 8.6 billion euro. Up to 2026 for innovative projects. Apply. Hire professional experts to prepare properly your projects. To my regret, and I'm an expert evaluator who went through tens of projects, a lot of projects, also from Poland, not only from Ukraine, are of poor quality. And that's why they are rejected. And you need to be just more proactive, because money is available, and jointly with existing venture capital companies, which like very much to join EIC Accelerator Fund, if they go from EIC Accelerator Fund, you can build different structures, scale up to international markets, be global part. It's regardless the war situation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this one, because I'm based for last year in the Brussels and Luxembourg, and we work with not only EIC, which is opportunity for the Ukrainian startups get not only grants, like for example, Relief Paper got 2.5 million, but also the equity part that we can go to the 15. You mentioned the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund as a part of it, and it's very important because all the Polish PVC ecosystem with more than 100 funds with a few billions of euros been invested exactly from this very important investor. So when we talk with the EIF, they done the mapping already, so they know about all 17 funds they're raising. They know everything about the 8 unicorns they've been producing, and they see all the pipeline. But the latest is that European Investment Bank, and this is what we are actually working in the Brussels, are looking for the state guarantees from the state European guarantees in order to invest in Ukraine now, not waiting for the Ukraine becoming the full member. So basically, there is an appetite to invest, and now the question is how to get the state guarantees in order for EIB to deploy the capital, not only on the loan sides, because the loans are still, they perform and they give loans to the agro companies, etc. But what we are pushing the EIF and EIB to be able finally to invest in the Ukrainian funds, because this is the only way how you actually rebuild Ukraine, how you do this. But the problem is obviously the EIB as a bank doesn't want to do this from the balance sheet, okay? So they need to get these guarantees. So if you talk to any politicians, European, etc., the only way to do this is to get the state guarantees, and then EIB would be able to do this, because the Mayday team wants to do this because they've done all the mapping. We've been working with them for 6 years. Of course, they know they're not part of any unicorn, okay? So none of the European investors are part of the ecosystem. So they want to invest, like in Poland, a few $1 billion been done. So it's very important part that how we motivate not only the EIB and AIF, but also the international development investors, many of them, as Dima said, that already back up invested in Horizon Capital, but also to allocate the budget from the Africa and Asia now towards Ukraine. Because for them, it's not also easy to actually allocate new capital and back up the Ukrainian funds as well. And this is what we also need to push in order, guys, we know that you've done the great job in different markets, but now it's all about Ukraine. So you need to figure out, and it's like chicken egg. Now we see something as a fund managers that will be able to manage this fund, but we also need to push this, bureaucracy in order to allocate the funds towards Ukraine. And this is what we've been doing. And as we already discussed, the war insurance is already available in many countries, and they're going to be built up. So this is how we can be able to do this, and also to use the Polish experience of the EIB and also Polish fund of funds that they actually was backing up the whole industry. So this is the vehicles we need to have in Ukraine to do the same as soon as possible. I would like to ask quickly about the challenges that you currently having, and also how you overcome these challenges, because obviously we touched a bit about the resilience, etc. But what is it? Just like 3 points. This is the 3 main challenges, and this is how we overcome this, because this would be interesting for the other investors to hear, because you already there, you invest in, so that would be interesting to learn from your experience and how you overcome the challenges. Dima?
Well, I would separate them into the external and internal. Right. On the external challenges is basically the perception, just the negative perception about not even considering or seriously considering opportunities in Ukraine. Although, again, when you look at the fundamentals, when you look at the actual numbers, the deals, Ukraine is perhaps one of the most compelling investment opportunities out there now, and hopefully with all the influx of capital which will come for the reconstruction recovery, will be even more attractive fundamentally. So that's on the external side. On the internal side, obviously, we need, because we invest in people, we invest in talent. Our core strategy is actually backing Ukrainian tech talent. There are multiple advantages. I mean, we can talk more deeply about it, but for us, it's crucial that the people remain committed to Ukraine and we avoid the brain drain. That's why we think it's very important that we raise the fund to support Ukraine's tech ecosystem, and it sends a very strong signaling effect for the people of Ukraine to continue living in Ukraine, doing business in Ukraine, and creating products in Ukraine.
I will echo actually the issue of brain draining. This is the issue that we're all aware of, because many Ukrainian immigrants, and the most active immigrants obviously, will probably find their ways around anywhere in different countries. So one point in this respect that I think, whether from this platform or other platforms, that we would urge the governments between Ukraine and probably EU governments to do, is to make sure that Ukrainian people that are misallocated or are under war protection somewhere in different countries are actually not becoming immediately by default, tax residents of those countries. And keep on contributing to Ukraine, because brain drain is one thing, and then the taxes. Once half a year passes, the Ukrainian citizen is forced to pay taxes elsewhere, but at the same time has been forced out of Ukraine. So these two systems, the protection mechanism and tax incentives, they just don't match. So this is a big issue. But from challenges, one thesis is basically it's trust building, because Ukraine has not had trust before, and because of internal issues and because of external, let's call it propaganda or agenda. And today, the biggest issue is building trust. Building trust is through people, through connecting to people, through people watching other people like us performing inside. We would be watching other people, how they treat risk, how they see things developing. But the main point is for investors that we bring across is that we know that there's a tendency of investors, looking for making an impact investment. So by investing in Ukraine, you both are looking to make money, we believe. That's why we're investing ourselves and raising on top of that. And we're also very impactful, because this is a period where, our lives are not wasted, and we as human beings want to do something good.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this issue of trust, because basically the most frequent question I ask Andrei, but who's our trusted counterparty in Ukraine? And I say it's investors. They've been investing for decades. Okay, this is your trusted counterparty in Ukraine, because they know all the bad side of Ukraine. They build the good side of Ukraine. They know how to operate. They push on this agenda. So the trust is very important. And this is why we are matching our ecosystem investors with the newcomers, not only to to look at the Ukraine strategically, but also to start with the co-investment opportunities now. So this is a very important point. Andrei, if you shortly, because we already...
Yeah, for sure, if Ukraine is represented by people like Andrei Kovaldyuk, I see bright future.
Thank you. This is a very short one.
And the next short, because that's my intention, why I'm here. Because all these funds, structures you can learn in universities, so I don't care to talk about details. I'm here to give you the hope based on my personal experience. 33 years ago, I arrived to Switzerland, as I said in a previous panel, with few entrepreneurs, and we signed, not waiting for the government, agreement to train and exchange Polish entrepreneurs with the Swiss. At that time, there was empty shops, no food to buy. Today, thanks to this program, we get 15 million Swiss francs with Verein für Freies Unternehmen, with the Swiss government. More than 20,000 Polish entrepreneurs visited Switzerland, and all started with 4 guys who came by car on their own cost. And today, Poland is one of the biggest exporters of food. This is crazy in comparison to what the situation was 33 years ago. So I have a hope based on the neighbors' experience. That's it.
Well, I have a hope because I see on this conference the entrepreneurs, and this is what we're investing in. We have a time for just one question. If everybody wants to ask, just raise your hand. Just one question. Okay, lady at the back, because we need to wrap up. Try to make it short, please. Or we can continue until tomorrow. So.
Thank you so much. My name is Oksana. Very interesting presentation, and thank you so much to all speakers. From your experience, I was interested, for example, as you mentioned, the risk profile of Ukraine is now worsening. From your experience, did the investors now price in the kind of additional premium for risk of the war? when you look, for example, in landscape before war and now. This is one. And the second one, the discussion was around the strong fundamentals, that actually investors would look for strong fundamentals. And I think Ukraine is now in like 2 notches in terms of credit rating to default. So you mentioned 4 industries, the return generated ones, which you want to concentrate in, if you can name it. Thank you.
Okay, I start with the last one. Look, I've been hearing about the Ukrainian default from 2014, okay? And the only reason why it's not happening because of Ukrainian entrepreneurs as well, okay? This is a short answer. But in terms of the discounts or valuation, guys, what you have been experiencing in terms of the last year? Is there any premium or down rounds happening?
Look, we've been investing mostly in IT businesses, in tech businesses, and there we see much less of an impact of what's happening in Ukraine compared to what's happening in the global markets. So I think the impact of the tech meltdown globally is much more pronounced than whatever we see, like, you know, the fact that the company has an R&D office in Ukraine and majority of its people are in Ukraine, at the same time 100% of the revenues are earned in the US and European markets. I mean, it doesn't change that much. So I would say we see almost no discount related to Ukraine factor for 100% export-oriented businesses. And for domestic businesses, I assume there is, but we also haven't seen that many deals with purely domestic stories.
Roman?
I'll shortly comment. So true, for the businesses, the investors look and we look for the markets where the sales are. So if the company is selling in the US or in EU, this is actually how you price the revenue. Of course, if the company is selling domestically and the market is decreasing, or if there is cash flow generated from local depreciated currency or smaller market, obviously this is all priced in. In terms of additional war discounts rather than premiums, I like the concept of war premium, but unfortunately it's discounts, and I think there is a type of investors that are in the market. There is English language in the streets of Kyiv. I call them vulture investors, but still they are looking for opportunities.
Exactly. Just try to buy the IT outsourcing company, okay? And then you will see that they've been asking something which is relevant to US markets or some other developed markets. So nobody's discounts the situation because they still continue doing good. Okay. Okay. Yes, please.
Nice to see you. I will try to be short. Andrei, know me. My name is Kyle. I'm representative of IT sector here. Reface company and Zebra, etc. We are AI startups in Ukraine, which is famous. It's already. And I see we spent like 1 hour. I was listening to you very attentively. And thus, as I understand, we have at least 6 funds here, representatives, doesn't matter, yeah? And I have my experience from this year. We already have startups, which is known in the whole world. And I was reading AI in UA with all your advertisement, like, we are ready, we are open to help Ukrainian startups and everything else. And right now I'm hearing, just come and give money. I have the story that's already 1 year, when we have, during the war, the problems, we were going to all these IT funds that saying, okay, we will give you all support during this year. After 1 year that we came to every of invest funding in Ukraine or associate with Ukraine, they given about the risk and everything else. Last week, we got funding not from these funds. We got funding from Andreessen Horowitz, A16. And I have a question.
Yes.
If we send in P&Ls, our business plans, how you not even evaluate your expertise that you are saying no to Ukrainian proposals, and American funds like Andreessen Horowitz don't ask about the risk of bombing, ask about, they just see numbers, they just see perspectives, and saying, okay, this is your check. And you saying right now, 6 funds, I propose to you to make some, at least challenge for this conference. I have 3 projects. which already evaluated by American funds.
Okay.
I'm ready to give it to your funnel. You told me that the funnel is very simple, it's understandable, clear. And let's change how many of them, of this project, you give the permission to invest it after this conference. If it will be at least one project from my list, I will pay double.
Okay. Challenge is accepted. This is why you understand why we invested in Ukrainian founders for the last 20 years. Okay, this is why. Because they challenge investors back, number one, which we like. Number two, seriously, of course, Anderson Horowitz was your first investors. We all know this, and some of Ukrainian, second one. But some of some of our members been your co-investors as well. Also, the last year, I didn't mention this because we're going to publish the UBCA research. More than 200 deals been done. Okay, so it's still happening on this kind of level. And but based on your challenge, we would be interested to share your opportunities to among 50 members, the investors that look at this. Yeah, sure.
First, we don't know each other, and you didn't approach our fund.
Okay, this is the plus one.
So don't blame, okay? And the second, my comment is work hard and you achieve what you want, okay? And there was the third point.
Co-investment with US funds, this is how this still happening. So that would be the plus.
Yeah, I forgot about the third point to of course encourage you to make things happen. Don't blame the whole world that your projects are rejected. Just do your job. You are an entrepreneur, yeah, and one day you get accepted. I was on your side, and one project I succeeded the fundraising after 6 years, knocking, having 25 years experience in various sectors. It took me 6 years, and the project is based, and the factory is already built in Poland, in European Union. So don't expect people to jump into even more, let's say, unpredictable legal environment. Thanks.
Okay, we need to wrap up. Thank you for the question. Those investors that are interested to look at the 3 other projects would be happy to do this. And also, just to wrap up on the note that you've seen the numbers, you heard our panels that continue to invest, okay, in the Ukrainian startups. I mentioned 200 deals that happened last year. So, and also the challenges that we have, and also the capital allocation to the funds, because one of the reasons that some investors are kind of pause they investment just because they simply lack of the capital, they're in raising mode, okay? So, but you also heard that we have a demand, now we need to come up with a supply. We have experienced fund managers, they continue to do so. So, and I would just summarize that on what I started, the best help to Ukraine is to co-invest with us, and I mean it, because this is the only way how we can do it all together, because Ukraine is an international project, by all means, okay? So everybody is welcome. We have the mature industry, so let's do this together. But once again, we don't invest in projects, we invest in entrepreneurs, so thank you for being here, and let's do it together. Thank you so much, and let's continue to work. Thank you.